I'm also announcing that as part of our additional tax cuts, we will end all taxes on overtime. You know what that means? That gives people more of an incentive to work. It gives the companies it's a lot easier to get the people. And, I went to some economists, great ones, and I said, what do you think? They said, it would be unbelievable. You'll get a whole new workforce by doing that. No taxes on overtime.
Hey folks, Dale Jackson here for Yellowhammer Now. Let's talk about the never-ending saga of the overtime tax cut and how it did not get extended. The Alabama legislature said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do another type of tax cut, and we'll work on it that way. Now, that tax cut would have allegedly, quote-unquote, cost $320 million. The Speaker of the House, Nathaniel Ledbetter, was on state media this weekend talking about this. Here's what he had to say.
How much can we cut to where it doesn't actually impact significantly, state budgets? It's probably not easy.
It's not easy. I mean, and the prime example of that, to be honest with you, is overtime tax. It was something I supported. I thought it was a good bill. The fiscal note we got was $30 million. Well, it wound up, it's going to be like $320 million. Yeah. Well, what people's got to understand is that $320 million comes out of the classroom. It comes away from students, teachers, and schools across the state. I mean, we got schools in our state that is in desperate repair as far as the construction or the building. And so that money could be spent for a new classroom, or it could be spent to update a classroom or tear down some of these old classrooms in rural Alabama. So it's not that easy. I mean, if you just had all the money in the world, that would be great, but we don't. And I think you got to be fiscally conservative. I think that's why we're in the shape we're in from a budgetary standpoint, is because we have been fiscally conservative, and that proves it, I think, with the two budgets we had this year. But you got to be mindful of that. You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, as the old saying is. So I think it's important that we understand, if we went with the full implementation of the overtime tax, it would have been something that had been taken away from education.
Now, I will remind you that this bill had support from the House Minority Leader. Minority Leader Anthony Daniels, Tommy Tuberville, the United States Senator from Alabama, and President Donald Trump, who you saw at the beginning of this video talking about this. All these different people from different stripes supported this, and I've never heard a single person in the population say they don't like it. The only problem you could possibly have with this, and Speaker Ledbetter brings it up, is the fact that the money would come out of education. And they're always concerned about taking money out of education. Well, I'll remind you, we have yet another record education trust fund spending level. We have been very lucky to see that continue to grow, and I think they've done a great job with the education trust fund budget this year, changing the way some of that money is allocated and passing school choice, which they have now extended. So A+ job on all of that. I just don't understand the argument that this money, quote unquote, costs anything. We've been told for years by Republicans that tax cuts actually help make money, and that the argument Democrats have been making for years is that the tax cuts cost the government money because it allows people to keep more of their money. Well, those are bunk. That's the argument they've made. But now Republicans in Alabama have given Democrats fuel to run that argument because they decided not to do it here. Now, you can talk about spreading it around, and that's the argument they make with the food tax, and I'm fine with that, but that was coming anyway. That cut was coming anyway, and we all know that. It was just going to take a couple of years of growth inside Alabama to get to that cut. Unfortunately, they sped that up instead of doing the overtime tax cut. Now, when Tommy Tuberville runs for governor, don't be surprised if he starts talking about the overtime tax cut, and we're back revisiting this down the line. They should have extended it here. They should extend it next year. They should extend it. They chose not to. So it is now, by all intents and purposes, dead. That's too bad. That's a good tax cut. They did other tax cuts, and they'll take credit for that. I just think it's somewhat of a disingenuous argument to say it costs the government money to let you keep your own money. All that has to happen is they need to budget for that, and that's what we expect them to do, not this. The overtime tax cut should have been extended. It should have been made permanent, and unfortunately, it was not.
Every year in Alabama, we miss out on between $65 and $90 million in tax revenue by not legalizing sports betting here in our state. Money that can be used to improve our roads and bridges, or elevate our school systems and support our first responders. Contact your legislator to ensure sports betting is legalized in Alabama. Learn more at betonalabama.com.